Users are letting the AI do that extraction of the information.
And that brings to mind Kuwait. They were digitizing manually. Then by the time they were done with the country, they had to redo the process given the rapid rate at which change was occurring. And that is really where AI is coming into the picture. It took us half an hour to process the entire country.
I have never seen such excitement about spatial analysis, of why analysis is going to play such a critical role in what the future is going to look like.
I think one of the most important trends today is the move that people are making to these enterprise-level systems. Weaving GIS into the enterprise infrastructure, that tells me our community is making GIS a mission-critical system.
There's a lot of really innovative work going on today in organizations building out their geospatial infrastructure. You have multiple organizations reproducing the same types of data sets. So bringing that into a single system that's shared for all is really the heart of what a spatial data infrastructure is about.
Our typical GIS customers are adapting to 3D. Hong Kong is a big example where they bring in building information from the AEC sector. They are using this for indoor modeling activities within their digital twin of a whole city. So from large scale down to the space inside of a building.
Our users are doing amazing things. I've called it a revolution before. This ecosystem opening up, seeing everybody harness the power of GIS and apply it to spaces indoors where most of us spend 70% of our lives.
There's a lot of opportunity around resilience, climate, sustainability that companies are looking to GIS to help support as they figure out their strategy and their response.
We're starting to see different patterns of how to use geospatial capabilities to advance things like justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and access.
Our community is so good at being innovative, about applying our tools in new ways that have never been done. Because that's our hope, is that we come up with creative ideas for how to apply the tools that we have. And that's how we're going to create the change and be part of solutions.
We've got this community of thousands and thousands of geographic geeks, map geeks, and they're pooling their ideas and they're encouraging each other and making things better. And it's got this cascading effect. I love it.
Okay, welcome back. Hope you get a chance to grab some nice food outside. I want to start off part two by saying that although we didn't get the VR 360 demo going earlier on, we are encouraging you to join us in the expo, which is opening after this session finishes and open for the next 2 days, to come to the Eagle stand and experience the VR experience for yourself. Our next demonstration scenario focuses on the rural environment, specifically land and fresh water. We'll look at some of the ArcGIS tools that you know already and see how these can be used to understand the change that takes place in the rural environment in terms of land cover and land use, to look at freshwater quality and to try to measure, understand, and act upon the changes and the connections that exist between these two parts of a very complex environment. To tell us this story and to show this scenario, I want to pass across to Jess, Justin, and Greg.
Thank you for that, Scott. Perfect. So, with New Zealand legislation steadily introducing policies to promote environmental sustainability, farm management, supplier viability, and council oversight will depend on an in-depth understanding of our rural landscape. In order to face these upcoming changes in both climate and regulations, we need to both decipher the past of our geography all the way up to the present day conditions of the land that we manage. So we're starting here with a large-scale look at New Zealand, and we're using this Esri Sentinel viewer to examine land cover using satellite imagery. Can I get some hands in the audience of people who have used this before or have seen it before? That's not, oh, there was a couple more that came up. Awesome. Okay, so those of you who have, you might have noticed that it's been revamped recently. So while it's been around for a little bit, it's had some updates that have just really pushed it to the next level. And this viewer, for those who don't know what this is or haven't seen it before, it allows us to see land cover for the entire country, reaching all the way back to 2017. If I zoom in a little to the Wellington region, I can actually play this little step mode, and that will show us some changes through that time period from 2017 up until now. Now these layers are really easily accessible. There's a button here that you can just push it into an ArcGIS Online map, or there's a button here that you can just download it straight to your computer. But we're going to bring our historic investigation into ArcGIS Pro, where we can start narrowing the scale down from all of New Zealand down to just a specific region and some higher resolution imagery as well. So here in our ArcGIS Pro project, we can start pulling in the imagery for this more focused area in the Wellington region. By connecting to our cloud store in the right-hand side, we have brand new content that's been shared in an S3 bucket by Lens. If I open up this bucket, I'm going to have access to all the imagery that Lens hosts for every region. And if I go to Wellington, I have access to all their historical flights as well. And so by pulling in these data layers, I can make a mosaic, I can make a multidimensional raster, but more importantly, I can make a tile service of my own imagery that I've chosen, including the years that I want. And as we can see here, I can create a step service and step through them, so I can see all the different changes of whichever year I want and see that change. So while we're in this region, we can pull in another land cover data layer, but once again at a higher resolution. And I'm going to pass it to Justin as we zoom in just a little further again, but this time in 3D.
Thank you, Jess. Using the New Zealand Land Cover Database provided by Manaki Whenua, we can look back in time and see how land has changed from 1996 to 2018. Using this information, we have chosen a piece of land which has drastically changed from 1996 to 2018. We have visualized this change in 3D and also turned it into 4 dimensions by time enabling it. Using time enablement, we can see how this piece of land changes from an exotic forest to a low-producing grassland, and finally, an orchard. Imagery is becoming an increasingly important component of any GIS solution. Here, I'm using Eagle's Maxar base map, built from satellite imagery captured within the last 12 months. This is a great way to visualize some of the latest changes to land cover, especially when comparing it to the standard imagery base map. These 3 techniques I've shown you, when paired with data such as imagery and land cover, are great ways in which we can visualize complex changes and can also be used in various contexts.
So we're going to transition to the present now, and we're going to narrow down to only the most recent and localized data for me. So we're back in that scene that I showed earlier. Instead, I'm going to use some high-resolution imagery from my drone that I flew just the other day. If I zoom to this layer, take a little bit of a closer look. So I processed this imagery using Drone to Map and created products like a true orthomosaic that are at such high resolution that if I zoom in, can actually see the individual sheep that were roaming the pasture at the time. If I move to a different area that I flew my drone over though, this one has a little bit more terrain. It has a little bit more variation going on. And in fact, for this one, I didn't just make a true ortho, I made a DTM, or digital terrain model, to get an idea of the elevation of this area. And with this, I used it to run some geoprocessing tools. First up, I used the surface parameters tool, and this is the next generation for slope and aspect analysis tools. And this allowed me to create a slope layer that I could reclassify to the ranges that matter to me. For instance, real steep areas are now over 26 degrees and dark red. However, there's a new tool. So to get a better idea of the terrain, there is a new geoprocessing tool called Geomorphin Landforms. If I insert that DTM that I mentioned earlier and click Run, what this is going to do is generate a brand new layer that will go on top here in just a moment that's now classified everything into the type of landform that is actually present. To understand this a little bit better, we'll pop over to a 3D scene. We will pop over to a 3D scene in a moment. So the reason I just wanted to show you in a 3D scene briefly is because when we're in a 3D scene, it'll start to show up that the red is the ridges here, and that the blue here is actually valleys. And in a 3D scene, you can actually see it right on top of everything. So finally, the last toolset that I actually run was a hydrology toolset. So one of the newest tools is called Derive Stream as Line. So with that same digital terrain model, I was able to create these streams so I could clearly see where water will flow within our area and help us determine our catchment impact. So in this demonstration, Justin and I used imagery to follow the history of our rural environment, from large-scale satellite to aerial, and then all the way down to a drone flight to understand the changes in the landscape and environment. We followed this journey through time as well, starting as far back as 1977, seeing land cover change until we reached the present day, where we investigated the current terrain and landscape of a plot of land. But now that we understand the geography of the past, all the way up into the present, how do we look into the future? How can we best manage our land and understand environmental impacts from certain practices? Where we last left off here, I've narrowed down to a single property where water would flow, but how can we see the biological impact of where water will flow for the entire country? I'll pass it over to Greg to answer that question.
Thank you, Jess. GIS has empowered us to assess environmental quality through geography and biology. Sustainable Development Goal 6 addresses the importance of preserving water availability and quality. Today, I'm using environmental DNA, eDNA, data from WilderLab, an award-winning eDNA testing lab based in Wellington. eDNA represents genetic material traces left by living things. WilderLab analyzes water quality, water samples, from New Zealand's rivers and streams that generate an environmental health index score called TICI, which relates to water quality. TICI scores gauge ecosystem health in water bodies by identifying DNA sequences present in various sites and assigning values through an interactive ranking method. In ArcGIS Pro, I can visualize the point data with colors representing the site's TICI value. This distribution helps us grasp geographical influences, like urban areas. But let's focus in the Wellington region, shall we? With ArcGIS Pro 3.1, I can now create informative pie charts, like this, which displays part-to-whole relationships. These charts proportionately represent data by districts, categories into slices, visualizing the proportion of rural and urbanized districts. We all know that geography matters. Other factors include slope, soil pH, and vegetation, which affects an environment's health. Using this knowledge, I can create a new layer that roughly estimates river health. I'll show it to you here in the model builder. But before I explain it, I want to save it. With the 3.1 update, I can use the new toolbox right here on the model view, and I can click Save, just right here. Now, I want to point out Group A, which is the forest-based classification tool. This tool helps estimate TICI scores using regression analysis and lists all the explanatory factors just right here. Then it generates an output, like this. Then, with this output in Group B, it involves interpolating this output with the Niwa River classification layer using the Add Surface Information tool. From this workflow, which I am going to show you right now, we gain insights of the potential river health in Wellington region. through the Tiki River Layer. The river layer visualizes how geography and biology can influence river health and biodiversity, a vital first step before accurately predicting water quality on our rivers. I'll hand it over back to Jess.
So while Greg showed us how we can anticipate the changing conditions of our waterways, we now can foresee changing climate conditions. That's going to happen across New Zealand, and use this to lead our decisions. Thanks to climate change grids calculated by the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, NIWA, we can focus on the climate variables that matter to us and interpret them in ways that can directly affect our interest, including the impact on our animals and commercial viability. In my ArcGIS Online portal here, I have a layer with data calculated by NIWA to show possible futures for heat stress index for cattle. A heat stress index is the level of heat that cows will start to decrease their milk production and start experiencing higher rate of disease. By using data for projected changes in daily mean temperature and relative humidity, thresholds were created based on when cattle would begin to experience mild, medium, and extreme risk. Then a risk criteria was created based on how many days this would occur on average. And this would help us understand the impact that this could have. Extreme risk could be where maybe 60 days on average cattle would experience moderate to severe stress, while minimal risk would mean maybe only a few days on average that they are experiencing any amount of stress. And we can see that on the map here with yellow being minimal stress all the way up to 4, which is where we experience extreme stress. But these models rely on multiple timeframes and possible climate change scenarios. Now with the new ability in ArcGIS Online to control multi-dimensional rasters, we have the ability to manipulate them to show the change based on the specific climate change scenario. For instance, right now I'm on 2.6, which is a more mild climate change scenario. I can increase it to about 8.5, and then we can see that there are going to be some more intense regions. If I zoom into Canterbury, for instance, we see orange, so that's a little bit of a higher risk. But the thing about multi-dimensional rasters is that we get to control that time dimension as well. So for now, this is a prediction starting around 2031, but I can change it to 2081, and then we can see that the prediction increases quite dramatically. So it's climate data like this in combination with ArcGIS technology that can give us foresight and inform our decisions on how to manage our livestock, crops, insurance decisions, and just prepare our lands for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess, Justin, and Greg. So you saw there examples of data sets being used, data sets that many of you have or could get access to, and the analysis being done to understand what the impact is on a variety of outputs. It was interesting also to see the drone data being used to create a variety of products, information products, including the water flow over the top of the land. I want to take you away from the rural environment, from the rivers and the hills, and back into an urban environment. But we are taking with us into the urban environment trees. So trees in an urban setting are a vital part to make our urban spaces more livable. Livable for aesthetics, but more importantly, livable because they provide shade and they also are great sources of carbon. Organisations around the world have acknowledged the significance, including here in Auckland, where Auckland Council have got a 30% tree canopy coverage goal across the entire city. Through a combination of ArcGIS technology and some cutting-edge GeoAI, we now want to share with you some examples of how trees can be better understood, managed, and then used going forward in our urban spaces. To tell us this story, I'm going to pass across to Edward, Carolina, and Olivia.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Through the cutting-edge GeoAI technology, we're able to create workflows that help understand and redesigning our streets to create a more resilient forest that shades our transit corridors. The features extracted using these models give us insight into the evolutions of our urban forests over time. Analyzing a 5-year period in Auckland, 2013 to 18 specifically, our dashboard paints a nice picture of the gains and also the losses. And this is really crucial because a thriving urban canopy doesn't just look good. It cools down our streets and also make our city more livable. Well, we're trying to keep the city cool by shading the roads and sidewalk as much as possible. Losses due to storm, age, pest, and other factors are mounting. And the efforts to increase our canopy require all members of our communities to understand the importance of our collective urban forests. Now, let's move to the third map. In just a glance, you can see the stark contrast between park benches with no canopy coverage, and also benches that's partially covered, and also some park benches that's got really, really good coverage. The distribution of urban canopy is not just about aesthetics. It significantly impacts the usabilities and the comfort of these benches. Without shades, benches becomes sun-baked, deterring usage and potentially causing discomfort or even harm. Now, meanwhile, benches with adequate canopy invite relaxations and enhance our urban experience. The New Zealand Cancer Society advocates on behalf of all New Zealanders to reduce cancers and reduce cancer risk and improve cancer care. They know that where we live can have a significant impact on cancer risk. And Eager Technologies are beginning some work with the New Zealand Cancer Society to better understand the locations of the factor influencing this risk, specifically for skin cancer. And to learn more about how canopies provide shade for us, I'll pass it to Carolina to show us how 3D models can provide visual aids.
Using 3D scenes in Experience Builder, we can look at the benefits of trees and their cooling effects on Wellington streets by analyzing the shadows, estimating carbon sequestration, and visualizing solar radiation. Experience Builder allows us to use a 3D shadow model to visualize the cooling effects of urban trees. Here's the daylight widget. It demonstrates the shadow cycles throughout the day. As we can see here, shadows vary with time, object size, and sun position. Next, the shadow cast widget takes our analysis a step further by calculating the cumulative shadows over a time range. This type of analysis is helpful in formulating guidelines for urban forests to maximize shading. This widget has 3 different visualization modes. For example, total shadow duration shows how long shadows last using opacity. Consider Cobblestone Park. Park areas without shadows are transparent, and while those with shadows default to a higher opacity. Trees also serve as carbon storage units, which help in mitigating the buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Thanks to the height and volume information gathered from 3D tree models, we can estimate carbon sequestration. However, our calculations provides a simplified estimation, and validation through field sampling remains a recommended practice to improve accuracy. Additionally, the use of 3D tree models extracted from LiDAR provides us an accurate depiction of the canopy shape and the canopy structure. We have used Landsat satellite imagery to create a heat map, which helps us understand the distribution of heat across urban areas. Now let's have a closer look at how solar radiation contributes to this pattern. Trees act as natural shields, deflecting solar radiation and reducing direct sunlight that reaches the ground. We have used Area Solar Radiation tool in ArcGIS Pro to visualize this, which enables us to display data on incoming solar radiation derived from digital service model provided by LINS. We have explored the influence of existing trees on urban spaces. Now Olivia is going to talk you through how a web application can help us making more informed decisions on tree arrangements in the urban landscape.
Using the ArcGIS JavaScript SDK, we have developed a heat island simulator geodesign tool to help us approximate the cooling effects trees have on heat islands. Heat islands are areas with increased temperature, often caused by buildings that can be mitigated by trees. Here in Hamilton, we can see the hottest points centering around the buildings and the cooling effect provided by the existing trees. We calculated the heat islands by considering the solar radiation, the height of the buildings, the albedo of the surfaces, and the heat capacity. Taking a closer look, we can see that this area has many trees surrounding the buildings, contributing to a cooler temperature. Compared to this area, with much fewer trees, that is noticeably warmer. Using the editor tool in the simulator, we can see how new trees will impact the heat islands. Notice how, as I add each new tree, the surrounding area changes color, indicating a decrease in temperature. The cooling effects the tree will have varies by species. In the simulator, we have estimated this by setting different impact ranges for each of the 3 modeled tree types. If I change to another tree type, the impact range will change accordingly. In this case, the tree has a greater impact range. With these new trees, I've cooled the nearby heat islands. However, we may be able to improve this tree layout. Going back to the editor tool, I can select the trees and move them to new locations. The simulator allows us to move trees around and immediately see how the temperature changes throughout the area. At this small scale, differences in layout may not appear to make a big difference, but on a larger scale, the difference can be significant. I have added the same number of trees in each of these scenarios, however, the resulting cooling effect is clearly different. Although the example on the left has reduced the total heat island area, the example on the right has done a better job at cooling down the hottest points. Using the simulator, I could easily experiment with the positioning of trees to produce this result. With tools like this custom-built simulator, geodesign becomes easy. Combining the context of the heat islands, buildings, existing trees, and the base map, it doesn't take long to plan future tree planting to create the world you want to see.
Well, the value of tree in our ecosystem has been beautifully demonstrated through numerous applications. However, there's one area that remains largely unexplored. It is the creation of a comprehensive database that catalogs trees down to canopy by canopy by extracting detailed and updated features automatically from both imagery and LiDAR data. It ensures the data is current, is updated, and is an accurate representation of the environment. Now, let's take a closer look in Christchurch. The recent introduction of the tools extract feature from multiple models in ArcGIS Pro allows for the extractions of various features all in one go. Features like roads, car, building, pools, and vegetations, and more. Yet, it is when we employ the segment anything models that the real magic happens. SAM, Segment Anything Model, is a new AI model from Meta, previously known as Facebook, that can cut out any object in any image in just one go. By synthesizing the strengths from both data sources, one can not only validate the features, but also enrich the identified object with added attributes such as height and hill. This result is holistic understanding of both terrain and structures. The digitizations of our city using these methodologies offer immense benefits, from setting up realistic simulations to conducting multidimensional analysis, 2D, 3D, and temporal. And this approach can serve as a foundational pillars for the numerous new workflow. With that, I'll pass it back to you, Scott.
Thanks, guys. So taking GIS out in the field is something that many of you, judging by the show of hands on Survey 1, 2, 3 earlier on, have been doing a lot recently and also for quite a while. ArcGIS apps that we use every day support online and offline use. Partnered with that, we have to bear in mind that every organization has got a responsibility to keep its staff, employees, and communities safe. And with every field job, there's always that element of risk involved, potentially encountering situations or environments that could jeopardize the safety of your staff. Our next scenario is one that looks at the field applications themselves to see how they could be used for data capture in some innovative ways, but also all the while keeping our staff safety front of mind. To tell this story, I want to pass across to Jack, to Greg, and to welcome back Ishmael.
Thank you, Scott. Where's my staff? Where are my tasks? And where are my hazards? These are the 3 essential questions that any operational manager needs to know at all times. To start, I have this dashboard showing my business operations. I want to focus on the map on the left here. I can see where my field operators are, where they've been, and when they were last online. You most likely have field crews carrying out their daily work using different mobile applications, and location tracking is a feature available across all of them. On my map, I can see my field workers. For example, I can see Greg's last known location, as well as a breadcrumb trail of tracks. I can also see some statistics, such as device battery, GPS accuracy, and speed, and this is updated frequently. Now let's see our field operator Greg in action.
Thanks, Jack. As a field worker, I've been emailed via a webhook in my iPad. I can see I have an assignment to go assess Braithwaite Park in Hamilton after some recent storms. Webhooks are non-GIS tools that helps you automate your workflows. All the information I need to know for this assignment is in this email. There's a link to the Field Maps assignment and the link to the risk register dashboard. But before I head out, I want to see my surroundings in 3D. So by clicking on that link, it takes me to ArcGIS Earth Mobile. I can see the latest drone imagery of the park, but I've also pulled in the 3D buildings of Hamilton. And this is how it looks like from here. Now, it's time for me to be out in the field. From the initial email, I've now opened the Field Maps app. I've been asked to enable location sharing, like this. This functionality tracks my current and historical positions, which updates the dashboard that Jack showed you earlier. As you can see, I've pulled in the latest drone imagery of the park from Hamilton City Council. Also, with the recent June update, there is now a customized geofence alert made through Arcade. I've received this notification right here, as I'm close to a previously reported hazard, which was an aggressive animal. Geofencing is a key tool used to inform people of potential areas that may affect a field operator's work. But let's head back to the assignment. I can see that there's an obstruction on the footpath. From the storm, a tree has fallen down here. And I must locate this hazard on the map. So I'll go ahead and create a new hazard area. Then I'll draw a square just right here. Then I'll add in the necessary fields. So I'll add in my name. The date, as you can see here, is automatically calculated through an Arcade expression. Then the hazard type is obviously an obstruction. And yes, further assessment is required in this case. Then I will hit the submit button. Collecting all these hazards is a great start to creating a risk register. Those in the office can view this, but with a recent update, those in the field can also view the dashboard with the new mobile configuration. I can also see the big picture of risk reported in the field and as they are updated. This is a great tool for you to have real-time information on your fingertips no matter where you are. But for now, I'll hand it over to Ishmael, who is now going to carry out a further assessment of that fallen tree that I just did earlier.
Thank you, Greg. So I'm going to use Survey 123. Many of you know this application. You can build geographically intelligent forms for your mobile device with it. Now, what you might not be aware of is that from Survey 123, you can manage your assignments. So here you are looking at a list of the things I need to do today. And one of them is the tree hazard evaluation that Greg pushed into my queue. So you can sort these assignments by date, also by geography. So the one that is closest to my location is now sitting at the top. From the Survey 123 app, I can also look at all my assignments in a map. So here you have the map, which hopefully will load in a second. You can see my location here being simulated. Let's go back into the list, and then I'm going to just navigate to that particular place using my map navigation tool. So let's pretend that I have arrived to that particular location. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the form for that assignment. So in this case, I have a form that has 3 pages. The first one helps me evaluate the tree. The second one, the risk. And the third one is about the hazard abatement. So let's move on into the risk assessment page. Here I'm going to say that there is a branch that is going to potentially fall, and it becomes a risk to pedestrians. Failure potential high, size of the part larger than 75 centimeters, and target rating is going to be intermittent. As I do these type of selections, you can see that the hazard rating updates on the fly. This is because the form has been configured with a calculation. To make things super clear for everybody, I'm going to take a photo of the tree, and then I'm going to mark up the photo. So I'm going to just draw an arrow indicating the exact location that is of concern. Very recently, we added new AI-based functionality into Survey 123. I want to show you this one very quickly. So here you can see that if you happen to take a photo, right, and people appear in the photo, you can choose to activate a face reduction filter to eliminate the private information that you may have in these photos, right? So now you accept this, and if you open the photo, you will see that the faces have been blurred, right? So that's part of an AI assistant that is part of Survey. Last page, hazard abatement. Those are my recommendations to take care of the problem, and then I go and I send the information back to the office.
Thanks, Ishmael. Now let's take a look at the third mobile application. There are times when you just need to know where your people are and whether they are okay. This year, we've already experienced a number of devastating storms with predicted trends saying this is going to increase in years to come. So simplifying the process for individuals to check in from their current location becomes the biggest priority. The goal is to make this procedure user-friendly, involving just a few button clicks. Here, using another webhook, I can see the weather in the area is bad, triggered by a Met Service weather warning. Opening up this quick capture app, known as the Rapid Big Button Collection app. This app has been customized with a very simple interface. Staff members just need to enter their name and then click one button to capture their location and a pop-up question to check on their status. And then done. This will automatically send your information through. But what about those individuals without an internet connection? Well, they can wait until they regain coverage and then their data will be synced. Or we've seen an increase in the number of external internet providers, such as Starlink, which is being showcased in the Eagle Lounge. This opens up opportunities to take the field applications into the most remote areas. With this dashboard here now, I can see these real-time updates. And with a recent dashboard feature, I can search within this list. A helpful function when dealing with many features. And here is my captured location with my information. As you can see, this information was updated pretty quickly. With the capability to connect ArcGIS field tools to non-GIS technology, you can now start streamlining your field workflows today. Thank you.
Thanks, team. So it's an awesome combination. The field applications paired up with dashboard, and many of you are using that combination today. But hopefully a few little tips and tricks there in terms of connecting them, as well as some of those latest features like the AI tool to make sure that personal information is not captured if it's what you're not looking to do. Our next scenario looks at how we can use the latest ArcGIS tools, including some that you probably haven't seen before, to monitor, track, and understand how information which is coming to us for events that are far away, perhaps thousands of kilometers away, and use these to create actionable intelligence for others. Our scenarios up until now have been focused on land, on dry land. But for this scenario, I want to pass to Ed, who's going to take us out onto the high seas of the Southern Ocean. Ed.
Thank you, Scott, and ahoy, everybody. New Zealand's location in the South Pacific is unique, and so it presents with it many challenges across multiple domains, notably national security. Across all of government, understanding across our area of interest what is happening, where it is happening, who is doing it, and then how and why they are doing it is critical. For our agencies, timely, authoritative, and widely disseminated situational awareness is a critical enabler to support a variety of security, safety, and emergency scenarios. These include the abilities to deter illegal and illicit fishing activities within New Zealand and our partners' area of interests. So thousands of vessels operate in and out of New Zealand's exclusive economic zone annually, majority of which are operating within the law and providing a vital role in our international trade. However, there are exceptions to this hiding amongst the traffic, some which are easy to detect spatially, such as those operating within marine reserves that are tagged as a fishing vessel, and then others that are not as straightforward, requiring additional spatial and non-spatial techniques when we do our analysis to detect. I've been notified of a vessel that requires a closer look, and the name itself gives away that this is a little bit of a bad operator. So for what happens next as an analyst, I need a location that helps me collect and process my various sources. This is made easier with a new tool in the ArcGIS lineup called ArcGIS AllSource. This is a reconfigured desktop application that's primarily aimed at intelligence professionals who maybe don't need the complexity of ArcGIS Pro, but similar tools to do their day-to-day functions. So my collected sources that you can see here should look familiar, and these are the same layers and sources that were in the web-based view. I have my automated identification system data, AIS. This is a tracking system that uses transceivers for ships, and I can see for a specific time period and define that a certain area of interest that's occurred that sits within our northern economic zone. So the raw AIS information shows me what, where, and when for every vessel. I can look into the attributes and start looking at perhaps heading and certain speed over time. And this is great for giving me information on individual behaviour, but this doesn't tell me how these vessels are interacting. So as an analyst, I can use the various tools available to me in the toolboxes that have been reskinned and renamed for intelligence professionals, not geospatial professionals, and start unpacking a little bit more about this information. So for starters, it's always useful to maybe reconstruct tracks. So this starts telling me the trends for each of those vessels, their past behaviour. I've also got a whole lot of other tools available for me that allow me to unpack this even further. I can look at specific proximity events for all these lines that you can see on the map to work out when vessels were coming in contact with one another for a specific time period and then moving away. I can then also look at some of the other tools, in particular looking at specific areas of open ocean where there's been a lot of activity in the form of meeting locations. So the layer that I'm turning on now is a derived output of that tool. It allows me to look at specific areas where ships have been coming in and out of certain areas, and it counts the amount of meetings that have taken place from those vessels in a small little patch of areas of open ocean. And it even gives me the specific meeting locations and information around the vessels themselves that were participating in that foray on the high seas. So this is fantastic in terms of understanding that initial why, potentially the how, but I can take this a little bit further using a tool that we haven't shown before, but we're very excited to show today, ArcGIS Knowledge. ArcGIS Knowledge is an enterprise extension and a server that allows us to use the link analysis capabilities that Ishmael referred to earlier, but have an enterprise server hosting that information for us to query and retrieve what we need to know. I've loaded in all my vessels to start with as individual entities. And this Lego brick essentially shows us all the vessels that are participating for that given time period and that specific area to start building connections between these. So the reason I emphasised earlier on those meeting locations is I can also use that as a data set. And I can start building connections between these and creating something quite special. When I join all these vessels together based on their rendezvous and meeting locations, I create what's known in the trade by its technical term, a fuzzball. This shows me all those interrelationships between all those vessels, their meetings that they took place in, and you can see that some are quite social out there on the high seas. However, the ones that I'm interested in are the anomalies, the ones potentially that aren't interacting with other vessels, perhaps for very good reason, or in the case of Turtle Skull, maybe bad ones. So taking a selection of this data from that link chart, I can add it to a filtered view. This is a more palatable version of that same link chart, just showing vessels that were participating in that group. And so this is great. I can go in and I can start using some of the tools that are available. I can conduct centrality and community scores, trying to work out which ones are, or which vessels in particular are the main actors in the scenario. But a unique value proposition that comes from having link analysis capabilities, sitting inside something like desktop software, is that we can view any link chart from a non-spatial view, but also a spatial view that you can see here. That those meetings that we're looking before with no added context, we can start understanding a little bit more using that geographic approach, looking through those different layers and understanding why potentially vessels are operating the way they are, and what's in the vicinity, such as a commercial fishing prohibition area, and then linking that in with tracks of vessels that have been maybe operating in and out of those, doing things they shouldn't, and building up that picture to then pass on to take action. So we can publish this information, of course, back up to our portal. And here in another page, you can see an enterprise site configured to reflect operational activity that's happening across our organisation, and where our information can feed into is maybe that little source to then target our assets to go and act upon. So this dashboard shows off what activities our agency are currently undertaking, but also it emphasises our operational status. What proportion of our assets are available that are perhaps training, which ones are maybe actively deployed, ready for tasking, and which ones are undergoing maintenance and repair. So the ArcGIS system, as you can see, provides capability of all forms of source, or to pull in all forms of sources to detect illegal and illicit fishing activities. So what systems and sources that are in your organisations could you be leveraging to help enable your awareness of perhaps your own illegal fishing activities? And with that, I'll hand back to you, Scott.
Thanks very much, Ed. Just to emphasise what Ed was showing there, that all-source application is relatively new, so if you're wondering why you hadn't seen it before, it's new to the ArcGIS system. If you are looking to do the sorts of things that Ed described, it's a useful tool to have. When he looked at ArcGIS Knowledge, we were using it in the scenario of national security and looking at illegal fishing. But as Ed said, bearing in mind that link and node analysis is something you can do with almost any data set, whether it's in the commercial space and utility space. It's a really valuable and to have alongside your geospatial view of things. So from a seawater, saltwater perspective, we're going to freshen things up a little bit and talk about flooding. Flooding is unfortunately ongoing. It's a topical subject. It seems that every time we have a conference, there's been a recent spate of floods. I don't assume there's a connection. It's just that there are more floods. This is not just in New Zealand. This is actually a global phenomenon, something we can expect to get worse, unfortunately. The role of GIS in preparing for, responding to, and recovering from these devastating events is massive. And many of you are using these tools right now to undertake this vital work. For the next scenario, I want to look at what's possible going forward with some of the latest tools. And to take us through the scenario, I want to pass back to Jess.
So as Scott said, floods are New Zealand's most frequent natural hazard and one of its most costly. NIWA and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predict that increasing global temperatures will only increase the amount of heavy rainfall, storms, and therefore the frequency of flooding in New Zealand. For local government, emergency management, hydrologists, this means that understanding the impacts of flooding based on previous events, keeping on top of changing circumstances during a flood response, and then disseminating final evaluations to the public is both an ongoing challenge, but also absolutely essential. So we're going to take a look at how we manage such a critical workflow, starting with just a map in ArcGIS Pro. So in the beginning of any emergency management workflow, we have a phase called readiness, where we're trying to predict the conditions of the natural disaster occurring in order to prepare ahead of time. In this Pro project, I have these flood models that were provided by Greater Wellington Regional Council that show the flood extents of the Wairarapa area, including areas like that farm that we showed earlier in the plenary. When modeling floods, we use pluvial models when we're trying to understand how rainfall is going to accumulate at a regional scale using LiDAR outputs. For more information about how these models were actually created, I strongly recommend going to the Greater Wellington Regional Council webpage. So just taking a look at this model here, if I use the swipe tool, we can see that full extent of these high-level hazard models in the South Wairarapa region. But flood models are built for various conditions in the unknown future. Instead of sorting through a whole bunch of rasters for various conditions, 30 models actually, if we look in the right-hand panel, all these rasters represent different possible conditions, like if there was no stop bank, if there was a particular climate change scenario, or perhaps even a time frame. So we're going to actually take those rasters, we add them to a mosaic data set, and then we create a multi-dimensional layer. With this, now as a multi-dimensional layer, I'm allowed to look at one scenario at a time. For instance, I have a variable here with stop bank RCP scenario 6.0. I'm going to increase that to the most severe and see how it changes almost instantaneously. Time frame as well, I can change that, allowing us to pick up on just minor changes in between all these models. So as a GIS professional, I need to be able to disseminate this to the wider masses. We can reclassify a specific model to only the factors that matter to the public. For instance, this multidimensional raster, we can make another one that's now modeled based on the standard from Greater Wellington Regional Council that they have for their flood models. But with multi-dimensional rasters, I do want to have a quick tip here that if you're trying to extract values from something like this, if you use the sample tool in your geoprocessing, you have the ability to create sort of a extraction grid. So if I were to put a grid on top of this multidimensional raster, it would look something like this. And this sample tool allows me to extract values from every single dimension of that multidimensional raster. And what that means is that each of these 1 kilometer square cells, if I were to click on one of them, the pop-up will give me every single scenario prediction that it had there. And that you can switch from these, it'll generate for each time frame as well. So we can see that this one was for 2100, the next one underneath it was for 20 years after that. But going back to the models themselves, let's say in our hypothetical demonstration here, we received information that a flood is coming, we know which model to pick. We're going to extract from that one of those models, and we're going to clip out the water of the actual lake that's here and create an evacuation layer. Now this layer is ready to go, and we're ready to send it out into the field for our staff to actually use. So now I'm going to switch gears out of an ArcGIS Pro project, and instead I'm going to switch to a dashboard. So this is the exact same layer that I created in ArcGIS Pro, but we have a lot more going on here. Dashboards are data-centric and they are dynamic. So we'll get an overview of the extent of the flood, what's being assessed as damaged, and we'll get live updates from ground workers using Quick Capture to assess the damage. Now, if I actually open up my phone, I have a Quick Capture project downloaded to this app, and this was based off a template actually provided by Marlborough District Council, so thank you guys for that. And with this simple app, with a click of a button, I can take imagery, or a brand new feature is that I can actually take videos of about 10 seconds. And obviously this is a heavily flooded room that I'm taking a video of to upload. But in a second, it will stop. And then I can send that data. And so with that, the point of this dashboard is to be able to get that near real time so that we can start to evaluate all these data. And I used a GPS spoofer, so I am actually in this map. We have now 15 reports within an evacuation zone. And so one other part of this dashboard that I've not mentioned yet is over on the right side panel here. We actually have a live feed of NIWA data coming in that's going to give us a prediction and also the last 5 hours and the prediction of the next 5 hours of rainfall. And this will dynamically change as I move around the map according to the towns that it's being forecasted to, so that we get an idea and can tell our workers ahead of time if we foresee that the rain's going to start increasing. So we've gotten information now that the floodwaters have receded, that the flood is over, and we want to finish our workflow where the story began in ArcGIS Pro for our final phase of the hazard cycle, which is recovery. So in this map, I have a bunch of purple rectangles all over. This is a representation of catalog data sets, which we're able to view the extents or footprints of all the data, which dynamically would change as we move around the map. But this is just to organize all this load of information that we've been using during this flood scenario. If I actually click on the layers in view to see what I'm looking at, it'll pull up pretty much an overwhelming amount of information if we give it a second to load. But these layers are not actually in my map. We are just looking at a reference or a preview of what could be. And that these allow us to see where the data is coming from, whether it's a web service, a map service, if it's something directly in my catalog. But if I actually want to add a specific layer to my map, all I have to do is make a layer from the catalog, and then it becomes a real layer in my map. So now, as our very last step, we're going to finalize everything that we've learned. We're going to move into our layout. So with this, we're going to put our finishing touches on our production map to the public. I have a lot of important elements that compose this layout, including contextual photos, like I showed earlier from Quick Capture. But I also have graphics and icons. Some icons here are recommended by the Geospatial Emergency Management of Aotearoa standards, but I may need to print this out in different sizes. If I go to my Layout tab and I want to switch the sizing of it, all those elements automatically readjust. They stay exactly where they're supposed to, and you can change throughout whatever sizes you need, and it will automatically keep them in the place that you put them in the first place. And so with that, we have a finished, polished product. And we've completed all the stages of readiness, response, and recovery for New Zealand flood. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess. You can always tell a GIS audience when they appreciate things like small things like your layout doesn't need to be resized and reshuffled around when you change the paper size. So in Jess's last step there, she showed how you can use that printed map, or the PDF, to engage a group of decision makers or a community with the information which she had created earlier in her analysis. And that engagement phase is vital to having people act on the information you've created. The best analysis in the world is not getting used if you can't engage the communities or people who can use that to make decisions. This mapping, the understanding, and the predicting are a vital part of that GIS cycle. We can, of course, use maps like Jess's, but we can also use other tools from ArcGIS to engage people in a two-way conversation. ArcGIS Hub is an extension from ArcGIS Online. It's widely adopted already as a solution for organizations such as councils, community groups, businesses, commercial organizations, to outreach to communities. Its purpose is to mobilize and unite community members for a collaborative effort towards a common goal, as well as raising awareness through maps. That map connection can really engage your target audience. To learn a little bit about how ArcGIS Hub can be used to engage and communicate, I want to pass across on my right-hand side to Ashley and Fran.
Thank you, Scott. Effective community engagement is key when implementing change, but limited participation and communication gaps can often hinder involvement. So in the next few minutes, we will explore a hub site, focusing on 3 key components: open data, initiatives using GIS maps and apps, and premium features for community engagement. Let's take a closer look. And so here we've created a hub site designed for use by a regional council, aiming to engage with their community on a range of issues. But of course, Hub can be used by anyone to target your community and your area of interest. Notice that I'm currently interacting with the site with no user logged in. And using simple out-of-the-box tools, I can quickly start to build a page to communicate your goal. At the heart of GIS lies data utilization. This external site functions as an open data portal, making it easier for the public to access and view content in one centralized location, simplifying the process for people to find what they need using these category buttons. For organizations addressing multiple topics, Hub's key feature is the ability to create initiatives. These cards here provide a clear understanding of what's ongoing or upcoming within the city, giving insight into what the council is seeking feedback on. With ArcGIS Hub, you can easily embed content, whether it's leveraging the power of geography with GIS maps or apps, to anything essentially with a web link. Here we've embedded some sample social media accounts, keeping you updated on the latest community news without leaving the site. Now let's start to explore some premium features. With Premium, you can establish a two-way engagement platform. One feature enables you to create feedback surveys within Hub itself, going beyond the basic survey embedding option. This uses the Survey 123 editor, which many of you are familiar with. And so gathering feedback is a valuable data crowdsourcing tool. On this map, I can click a feature to see where community members have indicated of areas that might need a bike lane. But as a public user myself, I can also participate by drawing a line on the map, making GIS interaction accessible by everyone. Next, let's explore an initiative. So earlier, Greg showed us the importance of maintaining freshwater resources, and it's a goal that involves everyone. By organising open data resources around specific initiatives, you can provide context and purpose for your initiative goals. For example, we've featured open data sets related to freshwater and complemented them with some relevant GIS applications, such as this one here designed to reclassify slope. Improving freshwater quality often requires a focus down to catchments. So here is an app developed by Landcare Trust. This tool supports clear and healthy water, productive farms, and connected communities. Since the waterway's health depends on its surrounding catchment, taking action upstream is just as important as downstream efforts. And so this highlights the importance of communication among community members. And so anyone can easily create a community account for ArcGIS Hub using their social media login or an existing ArcGIS online account. With an account, they can follow initiatives of interest and join a followers group. A more recent feature of Hub Premium allows you to create initiative teams. And so teams bring together cross-department staff with external people to collaborate on specific goals. It goes beyond just being a follower. In this case, separate teams have been established for different geographic areas, catchment groups. And as an admin, you can allow people to access the information that they need. Using the Survey 123 form here, individuals can provide more detailed identification. And so let's now look at a scenario where Jane the farmer has expressed her interest and identified herself as a part of Catchment 1. At the back end, the admins have gone and added her to the Catchment 1 team. And with that, I'll hand over to Fran to tell us more.
Thanks, Ashley. As mentioned previously, Jen expressed interest in joining Catchment 1 team via survey. I'll now go ahead and log in with Jane's Gmail address and see how things look from her point of view. But before I do that, I'm just going to highlight that we're looking at our public-facing pages, but this will change once I sign in. Now that we're signed in as Jane, we have access to an additional page called My Catchment. This page is restricted to our team and not open to all members of the public. As Jane is now part of Catchment 1 team, she's been granted access to this additional content. Not only that, but creating an account has enhanced their open data portal experience by allowing the use of favorites to save maps, apps, and data to access at any time in her profile. Now let's see what's in my catchment and explore some other ArcGIS Hub Premium features. As you can see with ArcGIS Hub, we can go beyond an open data site. We can find a place for people who are external to your organization where they can host, create, and access their own data and information, as well as sharing and discussing with other team members in the team workspace. Events are another premium feature that allows you to plan and coordinate meetings, whether they're in person or online. As a community member, I can sign up to attend and stay connected to the event information and follow-up actions. We can find more information in Catchment 1, like specific projects that are being carried out in this catchment area. Projects facilitate the diffusion of information in regards to a goal, the steps needed to achieve it, and the timeframes of these. Here we've added freshwater farm plans as a project. Freshwater farm plans are an important policy development introduced to allow awareness of surrounding locations and quality of freshwater resources. With projects, you can make sure your community is informed about when the new legislation will be implemented, when they need to submit their farm plans for certification, where to find the certifiers, and what steps to take after that. Condensing all this information into small steps and keeping track of the ongoing progress can help you and your audience stay informed every step of the way. You can also attach apps or maps to your project to support getting all the information you need across. We have a riparian planting project proposal as an embedded map that is only accessible by the members of this catchment. We will show the powers of discussions. RGX Hub discussions provides the ability to have private, content-based conversations within teams. Team members here can provide feedback, share information, and ask questions. When the content is map-based and you're viewing the data, you can choose to select an existing feature, drop a point, or even draw a polygon. And you can add that to reply or post. When contributing to a discussion, you can also notify other group members using @mentions. When you mention a member, it notifies them via email. So ArcGIS Hub is designed to be a repeatable and scalable approach to community engagement. You can start with your most important initiatives and build on the work you've already done as you tackle other issues and priorities. So we're very excited to see many of you get started on your ArcGIS Hub journey. Thank you.
Thank you to Ashley and Fran for that. So that engagement piece is vitally important, and hopefully we've given you a few ideas there using the latest version of ArcGIS Hub and some of those new features about how you could use the power of geography to engage communities with the messages and ideas that you have. Our world is complex, and understanding the relationships that exist in the natural and the human environment are very, very complex themselves. Sometimes we can use the geographic locations and the power of where to make these connections and understand the downstream impact of something that's happening. This next scenario, we're talking about understanding these relationships using the latest version of ArcGIS tools, including some of the applications you saw in one of the demonstrations earlier, but with quite a different context. In this case, in the context of understanding the downstream or connected or dependent impact of climate change on communities, which might sometimes is not an obvious connection. In this scenario, we're especially focusing on open data sets, going back to Greg's points about the value of open data. We've drawn upon as many open data sets as we can to power this kind of analysis. So for this final scenario, I'm going to pass back to my right and welcome back Ed and Fran.
Thank you, Scott. Climate change and its impacts present a complex challenge for adaptation. This all starts with risk assessments, which are made quite interesting in New Zealand, with many hazard exposures and vulnerabilities overlapping in different areas. Adapting to climate change and planning for the future is a challenge not just for local government, but our many communities across New Zealand and globally. The first step is to understand, almost have an enhanced risk portfolio visible to us. This allows us to begin to analyse and visualise the effects that climate change has on our day-to-day lives, specifically the social side of our communities. The outcome or benefit of being able to use GIS for this is to begin to understand holistically the risks to our communities from these ever-increasing hazards in terms of their frequency and severity. So where are people, assets and supply chains susceptible to these climate hazards?
When we think about climate change, we often think about the environmental and physical infrastructure impacts from increasing temperature, pollution, and sea level rise. Let's understand and explore one of these hazards. Using the new Atlas template from ArcGIS Instant Apps, consuming data from the Living Atlas, and open data published into ArcGIS Online, we can ingest different sources of information to build up a picture of assets, their hazard exposure, and their resulting vulnerability based on location. Let's look at sea level rise using open data provided by NIWA. We can see that this sea level rise exposure equals these structures exposed. These structures make up a variety of different facilities that we may depend on. For example, these supermarkets. These supermarkets may have many households dependent on it, as shown using the drive time analysis tool from ArcGIS Online Map Viewer. But what about the social side? How do these impacts change when looking at households, communities, and iwi? What demographic groups are adversely affected, and how could it impact access to amenities like supermarkets, health providers, or even access to services in neighboring towns? Turning on the demographics layer from Stats New Zealand and showing the different parts of society that may rely on the supermarket, it highlights that one asset's exposure and how it impacts the vulnerability of communities is very complex. Using map layers blending, we can show how this hazard exposure can be seen at the household level, compounded by the vulnerability of each household that is called adaptive capacity. It informs the ability to reduce the likelihood of negative impacts from climate-related hazards. And to put it simply, not everyone would have the means to move elsewhere to reduce the risk. Sharing insights we've gained into our community hub site in ArcGIS Online, we can provide community members with a one-stop shop alongside other initiatives that they may be interested in. Anyone living in this area can see if they will be affected and start the conversation over mitigation efforts required, such as managed retreat. This combined with the existing hazard information already provided by many councils makes an accessible product for all of us to understand.
But given that community risk has nuances and uncertainty for different time horizons, we can use this final dashboard to understand the changing risk score for our different community assets that we all rely on. Every parking spot, every public toilet, every grocery store, and the like. And we can look at these based on the time horizon over the next 100 years, but also the emissions target that maybe we're aiming for, and seeing how that risk score changed. The symbology here, you may not pick up on immediately, but it acts as almost a risk tree rings. In the centre, you see the risk score right now, and as you see over time, in some areas, that risk score changes to a red, symbolising that higher extreme risk to that asset based on climate change. So this starts to allow discussions around prioritisation. Where are we going to focus our effort in terms of these emerging hazard footprints that we haven't seen before? So the ArcGIS system allows you not just these tools, but also that high quality content and data to allow you to understand the why, to the where, to the what. However, open data really is key to unlocking all of this insight and all of these capabilities in terms of understanding that risk that we all face. So my call to action is this. What could you be sharing alongside all these stakeholders that we've leveraged for this demo that could potentially help those in understanding the problems that they face and perhaps opportunities and solutions going forward? And with that, I'll hand back to you, Scott.
Thanks, Fran, and thanks, Ed. And apologies for butting in halfway through your demo. Good job, no having any technical glitches today, which is good. So that brings us to the end of our technical scenarios. Hopefully we've given you a bit of a sense of the latest technology. We've shown some scenarios which you can relate to in your various organizations, your various disciplines, and parts of the country, and indeed the world. And so this GIS software itself is, of course, vitally important, as is the data which you use within it. But perhaps even more important is the GIS community which uses the software and actually makes a difference. That's you guys. So Eagle spend a lot of time supporting this amazing community. We're very lucky to have a great community in New Zealand, and we're welcoming, especially at this event, folks from the South Pacific region as well. Have we got any show of hands from people who are outside of New Zealand, first of all? Okay, cool. Welcome. The community itself does many different things, and I wanted to just take a moment to highlight some of the groups who do this great work across our country. In the education space, schools, universities, and indeed our own training and academy programs are a great way not just to train people in GIS skills, but also to give them the life skills that they would use. Training engineers in the value of GIS and the geographic approach is a great way, we think, to make the future a more sustainable place. Our teachers across the country do a great job of working with our own Claire Thurlow to make those GIS tools freely available to high schools across the country. Claire also works with all of our New Zealand universities in that same way, making sure that the tools are available for teaching and learning and research, as well as perhaps managing digital versions of their own campuses. The Gallup program, our 6-week intensive training course, is what many of the people on stage you see today have gone through, and it's something we encourage you to consider when you're looking at training your next generation of GIS professionals. Outside of education, we've got the New Zealand Esri User Group that Dwayne recognised earlier on. The user group is about you, representing your needs and being a conduit of information to us, as well as helping run a series of successful events throughout the year in the regional user conferences. The GIS and Conservation Group is an amazing group who support conservation activities across the country, not by doing the work themselves, but by pairing up the software and the GIS experts with the groups who need that expertise. So conservation groups who can't even spell GIS can take advantage of the skills that you have in this room. Outside of those spaces, we have a number, over 100 not-for-profit organisations that we support in New Zealand, doing all kinds of good work. We haven't got time to acknowledge all of them now, but I know a number of them are in this room today. And finally, in the emergency management space, both GEMA and also our own emergency management programme, we think are great ways to use GIS to support the important use of GIS in emergency management.
This is about you. You're tackling the world's challenges in ways never done before. You're on site.
Okay, if I look a little bit lost there, it's because I wasn't expecting that. That's my confused face. Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Speaking of partners, I'd like to recognize our amazing partner ecosystem. These are Esri partners globally, and there are 3,000 of these partners doing a range of things. Also in New Zealand, we have over 50 of these organizations, many of whom are represented at this event. Some of these are large companies you're familiar with, others are startups just getting into the GIS business. But they're always committed as we are to your success, and they're building tools, data sets, and capabilities that support your various types of work. Staying with the idea of community, I want to recognize some GIS achievements. I want to recognize 2 GIS achievements from New Zealand that have appeared on the world or international stage. The first of these is New Zealand's Esri Young Scholar Award, which went to Rachel Lawson for her work looking into the impacts of the nearby fire at the International Convention Centre on mobility for the whole area. As part of the award that we gave to Rachel, we hosted her at this year's Esri User Conference in San Diego, and she did a brief write-up of her experience at that event in the programme, digitally and hard copy. The second achievement I want to recognise is the Special Achievement in GIS Award, which this year was awarded to MPI, Ministry for Primary Industries, for their work in carbon emission trading scheme systems related to using GIS to manage submissions from various forestry owners. Well done to both of them. For those of you at this event, obviously you enjoy GIS events, and I wanted to just raise awareness about another GIS event, an international one, which is coming to New Zealand in April next year. The MEGARS event is going to be supported by Eagle and by Esri, and it's an international geospatial event focused on machine analytics and remote sensing. So if you're going to be in Wellington in April, please do check it out. Slightly different community, but a lot of really interesting topics to cover there. So finally, I want to just give some few updates on this conference. I believe that our Day 3 registrations are at capacity, so if you can no longer attend the Day 3 of the conference, please let registration know and we can recycle your ticket to allow others to come and take your place. The same goes for the dinner, our gala dinner, which is on Tuesday night, which I'm sure almost all of you will be attending, is pretty much a sellout. So if you're unable to make the dinner for whatever reason, please let registration know, and they can reuse your ticket for someone else who wants to come along. 2 things I do want to highlight alongside that are the story map competition and also the Conference Expo. The Conference Expo you'll hear about shortly. It's in the room next door. The story map competition closes in, I believe, I think 2 hours. So I'm not suggesting that you go ahead and create a story map right now, although I'd be impressed. Maybe we should have a special category for like espresso story maps. But if you have created a story map and you think it's good, and you think it's awesome, then please share it with us. And you could actually see the Eagle stand in the expo to help you on the steps to have that shared and entered in the competition. Before you say, nah, I'm too busy, no interest in that, I'd like to point out that the first prize for this competition is Eagle hosting you at next year's San Diego International Esri Conference. So it's a significant prize, and we suggest you enter it. The runner-up prizes are 2 iPads, so it's pretty good all round. So if you've got a story map in your back pocket and you haven't entered it, come and see us in the expo after this presentation. The thing I haven't covered, and I've just realized, is the theme for the conference dinner, which I'm sure you're all aware of, right? No. So if you're not aware, the first piece of information is that the conference dinner on Tuesday night is fancy dress. And by fancy, I don't just mean your best trousers. I mean you're going to dress up in a costume. For people who've been to this event many times before, you know this. It's an amazing, splendid view of people dressed in all kinds of amazing costumes. The theme for this year is a night at the museum. So if you haven't yet got a costume, get on Google, get to Dress Smart, and get a costume that's going to impress us on Tuesday night. There's also a prize for best dressed at that, which is not San Diego, but it's pretty good. The last thing I want to do this afternoon is just recognize the people who make this event possible, and that's our sponsors and exhibitors. We're here on stage today, but the sponsors and exhibitors, some of whom you'll hear on this stage and you've heard about already, and who are also in the room next door, are those who've put a lot of effort into coming to this event and showing you how their own capabilities, their own offerings can complement all of the Esri ArcGIS technologies. I want to particularly call out our gold sponsors, Clarion and GBS, but also all of those who've made the effort to come here and have the expo, have a presence in the expo next door, including those who are present in the community hub and represent some of those not-for-profit organizations that I mentioned previously. So the last thing I want to do is to close out this afternoon. I'm going to ask Dwayne to come back up on stage and talk to you a little bit more about the social event that's going to follow on from just now.
Thank you, Scott. Well, I hope you all enjoyed our first day of the plenary, folks. I know I did, and that was really some exciting stuff that we saw. We now move to an opportunity to truly connect with each other, our welcome function and opening of the expo. This year's welcome function is sponsored by Nearmap, and I'd like to invite up on stage Nearmap's Manager of Strategic Partnerships, Tatiana Alanova, for a short message.
Well, hello everyone. I'm very glad to be here today. It's very exciting to be a part of this conference. And I'm very well aware of the fact that this is the last presentation and I'm in between you and your very well-deserved drink. So that's why I prepared a very important presentation for you with 32 slides. No, joking, just 29. So please join me in watching this short video.
This is about you. You're tackling the world's challenges in ways never done before. You're on site before you're there, keeping the world at your fingertips and shaping it at pace. You're uncovering deep insights into the world around you, using the truth on the ground to engineer the future. You're creating more resilient communities, and you're doing it all with the most intelligent aerial map on Earth. Where will it take you next? Nearmap.
So just gonna briefly talk about Nearmap and our technology. We are a data intelligence and a tech company. We develop our own patented cameras that allow us to cover wide land areas in a short amount of time while capturing imagery at an extremely high resolution. You can then access this data via APIs or your S3 software stack. And there is much more than just aerial imagery. And there is much more than just aerial imagery. We also run our own machine learning algorithms on our data. Our team been developed these machine learning algorithms and training AI models for more than 5 years now, and they train it on our local data in Australia and New Zealand. And so we deliver in deep insights and automated location intelligence. Take a look. Right, so to finish, and this is my last slide, by the way, I'd like to show you some of our customers and their use cases. As this slide gives away, we are an Australia-based company. We work closely in New Zealand with our partner, EagleTech. So if you have any questions or would like to have more information, please pass by EagleTech booth and we'll be happy to have a chat with you. Thank you all, and thanks for your attention and your time today.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Please now join us in the expo area next door, which is on our right going out here, for some drinks and a chance to connect with each other, our exhibitors and our team at Eagle. Thanks everyone. Enjoy tonight. Don't go too hard because tomorrow night's much bigger, as you all know. Have a great day. Thank you very much, everyone.